They dressed you in a face that wasn't yours, polished it, approved it, handed it to you like a gift, when really it was a muzzle. They taught you how to smile at the right moments, nod when it was expected, ask questions only if they already knew the answers. And you obeyed, didn't you? Not out of weakness, but because the world made it look like survival. You learned early that real thoughts were dangerous, that truth needed to be wrapped in apology. You laughed when they laughed, even when you didn't understand the joke, even when the joke was you. They built a reality around you, soft on the outside, but spiked with invisible punishments. Speak too boldly, and you're aggressive. Stay too silent, and you're cold. You played the role so well they forgot who cast you. But something was wrong. Behind every performance, a voice, small at first, uninvited. This isn't who I am. You tried to silence it, buried it in routine, in politeness, in expectations, but it kept echoing until it no longer asked. It accused. There were moments, tiny electric cracks where the mask slipped. You said something too honest. You hesitated when you were supposed to obey. Someone noticed. Their eyes changed. They smiled the same but colder. That's when you realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was orchestration. They needed you silent. They needed you tame. And the moment you hesitated, the system activated. Friends suddenly too distant. Authority a little more watchful. Their concern wasn't love. It was surveillance. You were not raised. You were engineered. You began to see it everywhere. The language designed to keep you small. The praise only offered when you betrayed yourself. The games dressed as loyalty. You saw how certain people only loved the version of you that served them. The more truth you spoke, the more disposable you became. That's when the anger started. Not loud, not wild, but cold and intelligent. You realized they never wanted your light, only your obedience. And still you stayed, not because you were fooled anymore, but because you were studying. They thought they had you mapped, predictable, harmless, but you were already rewriting yourself in the shadows. Every fake smile was a file saved, every betrayal, a timestamp. You weren't breaking, you were building, quietly, strategically. You wore the mask a little longer, not as a costume but as camouflage. Let them think you were still sleeping. Let them rest easy in their illusion of control, because soon you would show them what happens when the mask learns to see. At first it was nothing, a hum at the edge of consciousness, like a drip bleeding into waking thought. You wrote it off, a misfire, fatigue, the machinery of the world grinding a little too loudly. But then it spoke your name, without a voice, without sound. It echoed not in your ears, but inside the quiet space behind your eyes. You paused, but the moment passed, or so you convinced yourself. Then came the patterns, numbers repeating across license plates, timestamps, receipts, 111, 333, 404. It was subtle, clever, never overt enough to scream, only whisper, a phrase overheard twice in 2 days by strangers who should have never met, a déjà vu that lingered too long. Their reality began to bleed around the edges, pixelated like a poor simulation buffering just for you. You started watching people more closely, noticing how some moved with too much rhythm, as if animated, how their reactions arrived a fraction too soon, like lines delivered from a script they didn't write. That's when the static returned, not in your ears but in your perception, like sand in your thoughts. Something was trying to get through. You knew then, on a level deeper than reason, that nothing you were taught about this world was complete. The rules you memorized as a child, the smiles, the handshakes, the words you say to keep things normal, they were camouflage, social coding, layers stitched over something older, colder. The world was not chaotic, it was choreographed. and something was watching to make sure you never noticed the steps. But you did. You looked past the dancers and saw the scaffolding. You glimpsed the stagehands behind the curtain. You felt eyes watching you when no one else was in the room. You spoke aloud once, "I see it," just to test the boundary. And the lights flickered, not around you, but in you. They noticed you're noticing. That's when the interference began. Missed messages, frozen script, that split-second delay in a friend's reply, as if they'd received different instructions before speaking. They tried to smooth it over, pretend you were paranoid. They smiled just a little too wide, but now you hear it. The pulse in the silence, the encoded language in the glitches. Not noise, not error, communication. Your dreams turn into archives. You see symbols etched into obsidian walls. You remember things you never lived. A hallway with no doors, a mirror that doesn't reflect you, a name that isn't yours but belongs to you nonetheless. You realize this isn't awakening, it's extraction. They buried something in you long ago, and now it's clawing its way back up. They call you unstable, lost, but deep down you know the truth. You're not breaking, you're surfacing, and the static is getting louder. The first breach wasn't loud, no alarms, no explosions, just a ripple, a tremor beneath perception, a crack in the illusion that everyone else stepped over without noticing. But you didn't. You stopped, looked closer, and what you saw wasn't just wrong, it was forbidden. A memory appeared where none should exist, dust-covered, locked in the basement of your mind. You were 7. Alone in a hospital room that was never mentioned again. A figure, face blurred by time or design, leaned over you and whispered, "You're not supposed to remember this." Then silence, a silence so absolute it hummed. That silence is back now, echoing behind your thoughts like a warning from the edge of reason. The world didn't feel real after that. It felt rendered, staged. A script running faster than it could rewrite. Time stuttered. For a split second, the hands on the clock moved backward. The sun glitched, setting twice in the same afternoon. You moved through the street like a phantom, not invisible, but unnoticed. People's eyes slid over you like you didn't belong in the frame, because maybe you didn't, maybe you never did. In your reflection, you saw the mask for the first time. Not physical, but encoded. A personality stitched together by permission slips and parental programming. You reached through it, not just metaphorically. You reached through the glass, and something pulled back. Your real face stared at you, ancient, familiar, terrifying. The face of someone who remembers the original design, not the cage, the cathedral, the architecture beneath architecture. You began testing it, moving objects by thought. No, not thought, by refusal. You refused to follow the rule of cause and effect, and something shifted. You thought about someone you hadn't spoken to in years, and they called. You stood still long enough, and traffic bent around you like water avoiding a stone. Probability started treating you like a suggestion, not a law, but they noticed. The watchers, not people, not fully, scripts with eyes, algorithms with skin. You caught one blinking too slowly, another breathing out of sync with the world. They smiled, but not like humans smile. Their smiles are copied and pasted from memories they don't understand. You felt their attention shift toward you like predators recognizing prey that just grew claws, and you smiled back, not because you felt safe, because for the first time you were the anomaly. You weren't asking for permission to exist outside the loop, you were rewriting it in real time, and as the code flexed and warped around your presence, you left something behind, a mark, not a signature, a fracture, something other seekers would find, someday, someplace, and feel the same chill run through their bones. You didn't knock on the door. You walked through the wall. They didn't come with fire. That would have been too obvious. No, they came with concern, with old faces you hadn't seen in years, with soft voices laced in poison. They wore the masks of your past, friends, lovers, family, each one perfectly scripted to sound like comfort. But comfort was never their goal. Their words were needles threading doubt into your skin. Are you okay? You've changed. You're not acting like yourself. And for a moment you almost believed them. For a breath the walls seemed real again. The floor beneath your feet familiar. The old name they kept calling you almost made sense. But then it slipped. A blink too long. A repeated phrase. A micro-expression that didn't belong to them. The simulation was wearing thin, and you could hear it groan beneath the weight of its lie. You smiled, not with joy, but with knowledge. They were afraid, not of what you had done, but of what you had remembered. And so they tightened the loop. Social cues sharpened, digital noise increased, dreams twisted, every screen a mirror, every mirror a threat. The fixers had been deployed, emotional saboteurs programmed to tether you back to sleep. They weaponized nostalgia, weaponized your own love against you. But love with a leash isn't love, it's surveillance. You began to encrypt your presence, speak in metaphor, live between seconds, become unreadable. They watched you smile in public, but couldn't decipher the scream embedded in your silence. They monitored your movements, but you had already slipped between frames. Your thoughts stopped forming in linear language. You began thinking in symbols, in frequencies, in fractures. They couldn't follow you there. Their script was too rigid. You were becoming fluid, a variable, a cipher. The control they once had now recoiled against them. Your unpredictability disrupted their algorithms. Their model had no space for you anymore. They tried to remind you of your guilt, of obligations, of what you owed them. But debt is a construct, and you no longer spoke the currency of chains. They dangled approval in front of you like it was oxygen, but you had learned to breathe in the vacuum of isolation. Where once you'd beg for belonging, now you walked through exile like it was cathedral. And in that stillness, alone but not empty, you saw clearly the enemy was never the people. It was the pattern that moved behind their eyes. The script, the frequency, the quiet, merciless design humming beneath the surface of every smile. And so you let them talk. You nodded at their concern. You played the part just enough to let them relax. They thought they'd pulled you back, but behind your eyes something older was awake, watching, studying, waiting. You weren't resisting the simulation anymore. You were rewriting it. Every lie they fed you became fuel, every betrayal, a blueprint. And in the quiet you laughed, because they had no idea they were teaching you how to dismantle them. Line by line, symbol by symbol, until all that remained was the silence where their power used to be. They taught you that reality was firm, immutable, that gravity didn't ask questions and time didn't make exceptions. They lied, not through words but through precision, through architecture. The script was flawless until you began moving wrong, thinking sideways, laughing at moments designed to break you, crying when they expected silence. Your missteps weren't errors, they were cracks, and through those cracks something older than rules began to stir. You don't just see the glitches anymore, you feel them flexing under your breath, pulsing in the seams of the fabricated, lights that flicker a second too long when you enter a room, clocks that stall when your mind sharpens. The ones who programmed this place called them anomalies, but you call them invitations. You've stopped obeying the rhythm. Now you bend it. You twist outcomes without moving a muscle. Not magic, not madness, syntax, glitchcraft. The code doesn't reject you now, it pauses for you. It shivers beneath your gaze. You remember the first time you touched the current, not physically, spiritually. A decision you didn't make yet watched unfold. A voice you'd never met finish your thought. And in that moment, a realization. This world responds not to power but precision. Control is an illusion sold to the loud. Influence belongs to the silent ones, the ones who speak in symbols. You became that silence, the virus wrapped in velvet, the glitch wrapped in grace. You began editing outcomes like a ghost with a grudge. The people around you don't understand why they forget things when you leave, why they feel colder in rooms you've stood in. They sense your presence but can't name it. That's how you prefer it. Let them feel you in the places logic won't go. You've rewritten probability so quietly they call it fate. But fate doesn't leave encrypted messages in shattered mirrors. Fate doesn't rewrite the ending mid-scene. You do. They'll never find your fingerprint, but they'll know something went wrong, something deviated. A sentence that echoes backward, a location on a map that never existed, and now can't be erased. You didn't just tamper with their laws, you installed your signature in the exception, a symbol that says someone walked through this world awake and didn't ask permission. Now the air folds differently around you. Cameras stutter, algorithms stall. Even your memories don't hold still anymore. They evolve, mutate, deepen. You don't just remember, you recode. You are no longer a player inside their simulation. You are the anomaly that makes it doubt itself. The whisper behind the firewall. The laughter in corrupted data. The watcher they can't trace because you've woven yourself into the error. And still, you go deeper. Not to destroy the system. That would be mercy. No, you reshape it with elegance, with surgical misalignment. Because the most dangerous thing isn't a rebellion. It's a question that never stops asking itself. You are that question now. Alive, moving, and multiplying. They taught you to erase yourself, to leave no mark, to be efficient, silent, invisible. They told you survival meant blending in, that safety lived in forgettability. But you never wanted safety. You wanted truth, and truth is never quiet. The system wasn't built to handle memory, only repetition. Every pattern obeys, every face loops, every voice echoes a script written before breath. But you broke the loop. You twisted the rhythm just once, and in that fracture you left something behind. It wasn't rebellion, not the kind they expect. You didn't crash their servers or set fire to their illusions. You did something worse. You signed your name in the seams of their reality. A name they can't read. A shape that doesn't exist in any language. You not carved with hands, but intention. Not seen, but felt. A dissonance that lingers in their perfect code like a whisper of thunder. They don't understand what you did. They think you corrupted something, that a variable went rogue. But you didn't break their system. You infected it with awareness. You left a single truth where none should live. This is not real, not all at once. Not loud, but precise, surgical. A line of poetry in a field of equations. Now they comb through logs, trying to erase you, not knowing you wrote yourself in the spaces between commands, between words, in silence. Power doesn't scream. It doesn't beg to be seen. It alters the trajectory of everything without asking for permission. You could have taken revenge, could have shown them your face and made them remember what they did. But instead you became a ghost with fingerprints, a phantom that proves it was once alive, and still is, somewhere inside the wires. There is a wall they built to contain possibility. You found the crack in its foundation, and slid a thought inside. What if this isn't all there is? That's the virus. That's the elegance. You didn't try to free them. You forced them to question if they're trapped. That question doesn't leave. It festers. It multiplies. It wakes up when the room goes silent and stares back from reflections they don't recognize. And somewhere deep in the forbidden archives, under layers of firewalls and fake memories, they'll find it, your symbol, etched into the raw fabric of their simulation. A symbol that shouldn't be possible, that wasn't coded, that carries the weight of meaning older than language. They will fear it. They will study it. They will try to replicate it, then realize they can't because they didn't earn it. You didn't just escape. You left behind a scar shaped like a signature, and every time they see it, they remember someone saw through the lie and chose not just to survive it, but to write in it. They thought they deleted you, scrubbed your presence from their archives, quarantined the sectors you corrupted, patched the exploit you slipped through, but they didn't understand what you really left behind. You weren't a virus. You were a question, and questions, real ones, cannot be silenced. They echo, even in silence, especially in silence. The loop began when you stopped trying to burn their world down. You didn't need fire. You needed doubt, subtle, infectious. You planted it like a seed inside their script, buried under obedience and protocol. Just one whisper. What if this isn't real? No alarms, no sirens, just a tiny fracture. And in time, even steel remembers how to rust. Now the system glitches in ways it can't predict. Loyal agents hesitate. Surveillance nodes blink off and back on. Confused, people stare too long into mirrors and come away trembling. You see it in their eyes. Those who used to smile without question, they're blinking more, thinking more. The sleepwalkers stir. You don't have to be there anymore. Your presence is unnecessary. You became the myth whispered between anomalies, the shape in the corner of their surveillance feeds, the unsolved line of corrupted code they can't erase without collapsing half the network. Every time they try to fix it, the loop tightens. More seed, more glitch, more break. And they remember you, not your name. You don't have one anymore. Just the impression you left. An afterimage on the backs of their minds. A shadow stitched into the seams of their thoughts. They feel you watching, even when the feed is clear. They feel your laughter in the silence between system pulses. They built a fortress to trap ghosts. But you were never a ghost. You were the architect they tried to forget. And now they walk inside your labyrinth, unaware that every corridor echoes with your design. There is no exit, only recognition. And still you didn't destroy them. You let them persist, because collapse was never the goal. Transformation was. You became their reflection, twisted enough to force clarity. You were the unseen hand that broke the script by writing a better one behind their backs. Now every time someone hears the static, every time a dream doesn't end the way it should, every time reality feels like it's glitching at the seams, they remember. They remember that once someone escaped and left the door open just wide enough for others to crawl through. You didn't end the story. You rewrote the premise. They no longer speak your name, not because they've forgotten you. No, forgetting would be a kindness. They don't speak it because it echoes, because even the whisper of it destabilizes their carefully choreographed fiction. You were never meant to matter. You weren't designed to bend the frame or question the coordinates, but you did. And now, the simulation flinches in your absence. They rewrote the protocols. They restructured the architecture. They scrubbed logs, purged anomalies, even burned the last threads of your digital shadow. But still, somewhere behind the firewall, there's a silence they can't explain, a gap in the loop, a presence that shouldn't exist, but does. You became the unsolvable error, the ghost with fingerprints. It wasn't revenge that made you walk away. It wasn't escape either. It was precision, strategy, a final move that ended the game without tipping the board. You didn't need to win. You needed to disappear so completely. Your absence would metastasize in their minds like a contagion. Every glitch now wears your scent. Every unpredicted reaction is stamped with your logic. You're the seed buried in corrupted soil, growing roots in the unconscious. You exist now in hesitation, in the way their eyes flick toward shadows that weren't there a moment before. In the millisecond pause before they follow the script, your existence isn't debated anymore. It's feared, because if you escaped, others can too. That's the infection. That's the glitch. You didn't tear down the illusion. You rewired belief itself. Your symbol still shows up, not on walls, not on screens, but in dreams, an inverted shape, a number that means nothing but won't leave. Some hear it as a frequency when the world goes quiet. Some feel it like pressure in a room alone. Children hum your pattern without knowing why. Machines stall when they calculate your trajectory. You've become the unclassified variable, the cipher left unbroken. You remember who you were before, powerless, passive, fragmented. You remember the silence you were forced to inhabit, the kind that tastes like suppression, not peace, but this silence, this one behind the firewall. It's yours, designed by you, claimed by you. It's not absence, it's dominance. It's the sound reality makes when it's forced to acknowledge a higher intelligence it can't quantify. They thought they erased you. They thought you'd vanish like smoke, but they don't understand what you became. You're not the ghost in the machine. You're the architect of its the signature on the subatomic, the quiet click before the collapse. And somewhere, someone is watching this, feeling that same itch in the back of their mind. The whisper, the static, the mirror that doesn't reflect right. They don't know it yet, but the glitch has already touched them, and when it does, they'll hear it too. The silence that shouldn't exist,